Hi, I'm Simon K. Jones, and you're listening to the audio version of my newsletter. You can find more over at simonkjones.substack.com. So, last week there was a bit of a fracas on notes. By social media standards, having a bit of a tiff on notes is a fairly gentle affair. While Twitter is arguing with Mecha Hitler and Blue Sky is doing whatever Blue Sky is doing, a major scuffle on notes is usually a back and forth about an obscure aspect of literature. In this case, it was about how many books per year a writer should read. The focus rapidly became about the specific number, and 50 seemed to be the commonly cited threshold, rather than any kind of nuance. I mean, this was an internet argument after all. The implication was that to read fewer than 50 books meant you weren't serious about writing. The core point that most people were making, while mistakenly thinking they were arguing with each other, was that it's important for writers to also be readers. That's something I reckon we could all get behind, right? Putting a number on it, though, turning it into a KPI metric, adds no value. It was all very silly, and I don't want to relitigate it here. That said, I kind of found myself going down a few tangential rabbit holes, so in no particular order. How do you define a book? For the record, and in my opinion, it doesn't matter how many books you read each year. The number of books really doesn't matter so long as you're reading. On the basic logic end, trying to pinpoint a specific number of required books creates an arbitrary threshold. You don't hit 50 books and suddenly become a serious writer. Doubling the amount, for example, like reading 100 books in a year, doesn't make you extra serious. At some point you'll be reading so many books that you run out of time to write. A big part of why it doesn't really make sense is that a book is not a defined unit. It's not a constant. You could theoretically put a minimum threshold on the number of films to watch per year because films are more standardised in their runtime. A film tends to come in at 2 hours. Some are a bit shorter, some are a bit longer. It takes the same exact amount of time to watch a movie for every member of the audience. You could easily calculate how many films you could squeeze into a given time period if you are so inclined. Books, though, are amorphous things. While there are word count thresholds to separate like novella from novel, it's all very loose. A book can range from tiny to gargantuan. Reading lots of short books is going to be easier than reading giant epics, evidently. It's actually quite interesting how this varies across art forms. Albums and songs can vary, but a song tends to sit around 4-minute mark, and an album might be 45 minutes. A comic issue has a very regimented page count. Video games, however, can vary from an hour or two to literally hundreds of hours. The expectation of time from different forms varies massively. But the point is, number of books is not a reliable measure of anything. So let's talk about accessibility issues. And my main concern during the discussion was that newer, less experienced writers might feel worried about what constitutes being a serious writer, or indeed slower readers could feel somewhat ashamed. That's not a nice place to be. Rather overlooked in the debate was that everyone reads at a different pace. I've known people who are able to devour books at a pace I've never managed, even when I was a teenager with 4 books on the go simultaneously. They can skim a page at lightning speed while still taking in the subtleties of the prose. It's remarkable. I'm very envious. I'm not like that. I tend to read slowly and linearly, taking in every word and sentence as I go along. But reading ability is only part of it. This isn't really a skill thing. So, I've had crummy eyes since I was a child, and now I'm in my 40s, it's all downhill. Even the Mona Lisa is falling apart, etc. As my prescription intensifies, it's a simple fact that reading is no longer an effortless activity. At night, it's physically harder for me to read. There will be some of you listening to this with even worse eyesight than me, I'm sure. Our capacity for reading books is reduced. We can't help that. There are other factors. Attention spans vary from person to person, dependent on countless aspects from environment to day-to-day responsibilities to neurological. All of this affects how many books we are able to read. If you get through 50 books each year, that's fantastic. Very pleased for you. But if you don't, that's also fine, because it really has nothing to do with how serious any of us are about our writing. Okay, correlation versus causality. You know that phrase about mistaking correlation for causality? Just because something appears to be related to something else doesn't mean that it is. Like, many excellent writers read lots of books. Reading lots of books will not automatically make you an excellent writer. Both of those statements are true. I've always thought that the main thing you need to do to improve as a writer is simply to write. Now, everything else is a multiplier or an accelerant. Reading books will probably improve your writing, but not magically and in isolation. Studying at university or via a high-quality online course or reading some how-to books, or whatever it is, will probably improve your writing at a faster rate than if you didn't study, but only if you continued to actually write. The only 100% vital and unavoidable activity that absolutely, positively cannot be avoided if you want to be a serious writer is to write. Analysis also takes time. I studied film and English at university back in the mists of time. It was fun and even quite useful for my subsequent rather meandering career. My reading, though, has never been the same. Not in a bad way, but the carefree, super-fast reading of my childhood was long gone. After my studies, I wasn't able to read solely for pleasure and entertainment. Analysis of the text was hard-coded into me, and it resulted in a far slower reading speed. I had to kind of rediscover my love of reading, which seems to be a common issue with arts graduates. I can spend 10 minutes reading and rereading a single sentence. A page could take me 20 minutes, not because I'm stuck, but because I'm poking at the structure and the way it's put together. Point is, I don't have a consistent reading speed. My brain is split in half between pure enjoyment and critical analysis. I think I've found a decent balance of the two. That slower, more methodical pace is what enables my reading to improve my writing. Learning from other writers isn't only about enjoying their stories. It requires a forensic digging into their technique, and that can't be rushed, shouldn't be rushed. It's not just about books. So something I find quite tedious is when a medium is obsessed with itself. Cinema, for example, is obsessed with cinema, often being very self-referential. Games iterate upon themselves over and over, rarely pulling in influences from, say, literature. If someone loves something so much that they want to make their own creations, the risk, I think, is that their pool of references and knowledge is simply too shallow. Somebody adores superhero comics, so starts writing superhero comics. Someone loves action movies, so goes into directing action movies. It can become oddly insular and recursive, like everything is a photocopy of a photocopy. Art gets really interesting when it's pulling from a wider spectrum of inspiration. A movie that draws upon literature and Art Deco architecture and modernist paintings. A video game that looks to classic science fiction novels rather than other games. Novelists who don't look down on other art forms. It's cross-pollination that leads to the really exciting, innovative stuff that pushes everyone forward. My point, I suppose, is to learn from everything, all the time. Read as many books as you can. Watch movies, read comics, play games, go to art galleries, listen to music, study history, go wide and deep, and follow those weird rabbit holes to see where you pop out. And then after all of that, don't forget to leave time for some writing. Thanks for listening. You can find a lot more that I've written over the last 3 years over on the newsletter at simonkjones.substack.com, where you can also leave comments and wildly disagree with me. Hope to see you over there.